I've been running a bunch of different tests on tofu lately, like salted tofu, the how long to press your tofu, and I've come up with some pretty interesting results. Now in the past, I've also done some fun tests on mushrooms to see if we can make them meatier, see if we can get their texture to be a little bit more like that meat-based protein that we're trying to mimic here. Now I'm curious about two things today. There's two methods that prepare tofu that do actually make it meatier. First one is by marinating it and then pressing it for a long period of time, over 24 hours. The second method is the double freeze method that a lot of you know. I'm wondering, will that have any effect on the texture of a mushroom? So let's find out. We're gonna do two tests. We're gonna do a pressing test for 24 hours and a freeze test for 24 hours. But first, let's go ahead and prep our mushrooms, make our marinade, and then we'll get started on this test. Now the part with these mushrooms that we're really trying to change is the body of the mushroom. Now this mushroom, the king oyster mushroom, is a little bit different than your standard, like your regular grocery store mushroom. You can find these a lot of times at like Whole Foods, sometimes your farmers markets. I've been really lucky to find these at my local Asian markets. They always carry them. Right now it's king oyster mushroom season, so they're very large. Now for this test, we're specifically gonna be focusing on the stem. So to prep these mushrooms, all we're gonna do is just wipe them down, chop off the stem, chop off the base where they grow. You might see some like growing substrate at the bottom here. That's kind of like the dirt or like the sawdust medium that they grow out of. Now, I'm not gonna throw away these caps, don't worry. I'm just gonna toss these in the fridge. I'll saute these up later with like, another dish. Monica and I can make some I can make some fried rice with these. You can turn them into ground beef. There's a million things you could do with the caps. Just save them for your regular meal later. For the broth, I'm just gonna be doing a simple vegan chicken broth with just a little bit of nutritional yeast and some hot water. I'm going to place the mushrooms in the broth, let them soak for about 30 minutes. These mushrooms are kind of like sponges, so they'll soak up pretty quick. Once they're soaked for 30 minutes, I'm gonna pull out two mushrooms, place them in the tofu press, and I'm gonna press them at their hardest strength for 24 hours. The other two mushrooms, I'm gonna pour a little bit of broth into a large baggie, throw the mushrooms into the baggie, and we're gonna toss them into the freezer. We're gonna freeze them until they're frozen completely solid, allow them to thaw out in the refrigerator, and then we're gonna freeze them again, and then allow them to thaw out in the refrigerator. Okay, so it's the next day. We have our twice frozen mushrooms, we have a fresh mushroom, and we have our pressed mushroom. Now I'm gonna pull all of these out, and before we do anything, I wanna just kind of give them a feel. I wanna see what the texture is like. I'm guessing this pressed tofu is gonna have a nice, very firm, very meat-like texture. I'm really excited to cook this and see how it comes out. Oh, it's so dense. It is so dense. It's unbelievable. It's almost like a piece of Spam. Now with the twice frozen, I mean, really, oh my gosh, they feel so soft. I really think they're gonna be really nicely marinated. Then I'm wondering if the freezing technique is going to do something similar to how it works with tofu, to where it freezes between all of the structure of the mushroom, and then when it thaws out, it loosens that up. Freezing again expands it, just like why you have potholes on roads during the winter is the ice expands when it freezes and contracts when it cools, kind of breaking that road apart. I'm thinking it's gonna do a similar thing to these mushrooms. Now, we're gonna do two different things. I'm gonna slice one of the flats into strips, almost like if you can imagine fajita strips. I'm gonna slice one of the twice frozen into strips and also one of the fresh ones into strips. We're gonna cook those in the same level of heat, the same level of seasoning, the same level of oil, just to kind of like cook them and see how they brown, see how they sear, how they cook really. And then we'll determine the texture after. Now, I'm also going to be cooking planks. So I'm really excited to see which one of these comes up with a better texture. Have we created a better method for preparing tofu? Okay, we have our three mushrooms. We have our pressed mushroom, our double frozen mushroom, and our fresh mushroom. I'm really excited to see how these come out. Now, I'm gonna do this taste test a little bit different. I'm gonna taste them and I wanna give you just my feedback on it before we hear what Monica has to say. I have a really good feeling about the pressed mushroom, like I know what I want it to come out like, but who knows if that's what it actually comes out like. So Monica's gonna come in blind, but I'm gonna give you my thoughts right off the bat. So this is the pressed mushroom slice. Now for a patty, you can see I scored the top of these. I scored all of them in the patty form. Now the twice frozen mushroom. This one might be like maybe a more soft, where the pressed one was definitely meatier and firmer. Now, just to compare the two to a fresh mushroom, massive difference, wow. So the big difference right off the bat is the flavor. These are loaded with flavor because we soaked them in the broth, where the fresh mushroom didn't have any flavoring besides the seasoning. But the texture is wildly different. Pressed mushroom and the twice frozen mushroom both have a lot more meatier texture. This guy here, the original, that feels like a mushroom. The pressed is definitely firmer. Now I just want to do a quick rundown. I'm gonna have Monica try all of them and then we'll hear her thoughts. Okay, so go ahead and just give these a try. We're gonna start with this one here. This is the pressed mushroom.
Okay, very good.
Okay, now try this. This is a regular mushroom. Texture first, and then taste.
Okay, this was a little softer. This was more firm. And I mean, this taste was really good. It was kind of like permeated throughout the mushroom, and it was juicier. And it was a very smooth and like light and subtle taste. It was definitely there. This just had a normal, like a little bit of saltiness to it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
This just had a bit more of depth.
Meatier?
Meatier, for sure.
So out of all of these three, which pair would you think would be the meatier preparation?
Gosh, definitely this one.
The meatiest?
Yeah, for sure.
So honestly, you could do the twice frozen method. That's gonna work, that's gonna get you a meatier mushroom. But I really think as far as like quickness and ease, just pressing your mushrooms after you marinate them is gonna get you a really meaty mushroom, something that's really nice to work with and give you that meaty outlook. I think this is the way to prep mushrooms when you want them to be meaty.
Yeah, I definitely this one.
Thanks, baby. Heck yeah, I'm excited about that.